Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, a video show dedicated to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today we're looking at an expansion to Cascadia called Landmarks. Landmarks is what we would call a modular expansion. It has a variety of ways to expand Cascadia. Now you can take these and use them singly, or you can combine them in any number of ways to enhance your experience playing the base game.
Firstly, this expansion comes with some extra components which allow you to play with an additional 2 players, meaning you can now play Cascadia with up to 6 players. The additional wildlife, habitat, nature tokens, and starter tiles also bring greater variety to your game.
Now you can go ahead and throw all of these components into the base game and forget about it. If you ever decide that you do want to separate the tokens again, there is a small symbol denoting the landmark expansion to make that easy to do.
The rulebook also features alternate rules to play a faster game, as well as new scenario and achievement lists, which incorporate the new modules, as well as a new score pad for same.
The third thing that this expansion brings to Cascadia are 3 new sets of wildlife scoring cards, and you can use these as their own individual sets, or you can mix and match them with themselves as well as the wildlife scoring cards from the base game for hundreds of combinations.
The new sets are more advanced for the most part. E deals mainly with shapes, a little more complex than most of the base game, but a nice shakeup. F is particularly interesting and thematic, rewarding and punishing you for placing certain animals together, my favorite being the bear next to the salmon. And lastly, G, which constrains which terrain types you need to have groups of wildlife on, adding another layer of decision making to an already nuanced game. This one feels the most synergistic with the other new module I will discuss, as it raises the importance of terrain placement, which is the cornerstone of the largest module.
So let's talk about that now. The landmark module, for which the expansion is named, offers some interesting new choices.
At the start of the game, in order to give you a little more flexibility, players will draft keystone tiles. These will come from the stack you have set up for the game and will be chosen in reverse player order. You will add these to your environment. The expansion comes with some wooden pieces, one for each of the habitats. Each player can earn at most 1 of each type. When you place your 5th contiguous habitat tile of a type, you can choose to place a landmark token of the matching type on it instead of the wildlife token. You can still place the wildlife token elsewhere, however. When you do so, you will choose a card to go with it. At the start of the game, there will be a card in each of the 5 habitats for each player in the game. In this example, this would be the setup for a 3-player game. When you place a landmark, you will pick one of the available cards to add to your scoring area, meaning you will have to act fast if a particular card is of more use to you before another player can grab it. Most of the habitats have cards that use similar mechanisms. To illustrate this, we will use these prairies. There are landmarks that act as bonuses to different wildlife tokens, incentivizing you to work on specific wildlife tokens on specific habitats. Then there are some landmarks that score based on corridors. One helps you get the largest bonus at the end of the game, another allows you to combine 2 corridors, or a third rewards you for multiple corridors, or rewards you for fewer, as this 6-point landmark can really swing a game in your favor if you're careful. Then there are some straight point cards, and a couple others for wildlife as seen here.
And that's the expansion. You have the 5th and 6th players, some extra little achievements and rules setups, you've got the wildlife scoring cards, and you've got the landmarks. So, what are my thoughts on this expansion? Well, I really do love Cascadia, and you can watch my review on that. But for this game, some of the things that I really enjoyed about this game were the ease of setup, the ease of play, and the speed of play. I really loved all of that. And also the simplicity of the game I really, really liked. So I wasn't really looking to get an expansion that would add too much complexity or too much playtime, but I really was interested in seeing something that would add a little more variety and change the way that I played the game as it was. So firstly, let's tackle the 5th and 6th player stuff, which is like essentially a large chunk of it, right? You're getting a lot of new tokens, a lot of wildlife tokens, the habitat tiles, and you're getting a lot more pieces. So these are for a 5th and 6th player, which I will never ever in a million years play with. So it's kind of a waste for me. It does say that you're going to get some variety here. So if the other tiles were getting stale, however, I find that hard to I can't ever imagine I'm going to be like, geez, I've gotten this Fox on a Prairie too many times already. It seems like all the combos and stuff that you keep track of and things, I would find myself hard pressed to ever remember like seeing a certain, type of animal, and especially since you already have more tiles than you need, you're only seeing a subset of those. So unfortunately, this part of it is kind of a miss for me, and it's unfortunate as well because this game costs, the expansion costs almost as much as the base game does, and so you're kind of putting a lot of that money towards stuff that you'll never use. So that's a bit of an unfortunate thing. It's probably the only negative thing actually I'm going to say about it. It's like quite like Cascadia, and I find that this game also brings what I kind of was hoping it would, which is a lot more variety, and that comes into two major points. Well, but before I get into that, let me just address a couple other quick things. Number one, I gushed a bit about in my review of the original game about how much I love that achievement list and that little map and stuff. I really wish more game companies would do this with different games. It just adds some extra little legs and some interesting little things that you can do that really don't seem to add too much cost, but are really kind of a neat little thing. And I like that they updated that some. And the updated score pad, of course, is necessary and quite useful, of course. The faster gameplay rules, however, I can't imagine I got to play this any faster. It's kind of like a solution to a problem I never knew existed, but fine. If somebody wants it, or maybe if you're playing with 6 players and you want to speed up the game, then it's there for you. But to me, it's not of much interest. So with those out of the way, let's get into the meat of the two new big areas of this, which are the scoring cards and the landmarks. Now, part of the elegance of this game is, it is really ingenious with the scoring cards because you know how to play the game, and yet all you have to do is have some new scoring cards, and the game is essentially quite different. It's like it's a different kind of a goal to go for, and it's really, like I said, part of the elegance, and in fact that like I don't have to learn a whole new game. But I can essentially change the game I'm playing so it doesn't get stale, and I think that's so great. That and these are what you would expect from an expansion. Most people think of like expansions like just buy everything, and to me I'm like, play the game enough to where you're enjoying the game, you understand the game, you have a better understanding of the game, and maybe now you want a little more variety to shake the game up. And that's where this one comes in, right? Because like these scoring cards, they are a little more complicated. They're also a little more thematic. I mentioned the thing about the bears and the salmon. That's kind of my favorite. I like the solitary bears. So there's some kind of interesting things there and interesting shapes and stuff. But it is a bit more complex, especially the hawks. I'm never going to look at a hawk the same way again. Anytime I see a hawk in nature, I'm going to be like, what kind of mathematics is this hawk using to look at all the other hawks in the area? Whatever. But I do really like having that variety there, and I think that these are interesting. And then again, you could the achievement list, which I also quite like. I like that it kind of gives these little scenarios, so you can use different mixes to make the game kind of interesting, or to kind of like create a different experience in and of itself in that way as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to really flesh out the game some with these new cards. I also really like the ones, I think I favor the terrain ones because I really like using the landmark stuff. And I think that one kind of leans into that because, you want specific animals on specific terrain types. And that gives you some, like that's how you're scoring them. And then also you can kind of combo that with some of the landmarks, which, it's just psychologically satisfying. You're just like happy about like, hey, I need the bears here and I need the salmon. And you're like, oh, cool, I can get some bonuses with salmon or with bear, right? And so like you kind of try to grab up some of those different cards to kind of push your score a little bit further. And, if everybody's doing that, it's super fun because then you just all have high scores and it's kind of like an enjoyable thing instead of like, boy, one person kind of runs away with it or whatever. So I like that's there. So I kind of started talking about this. Let's talk kind of dive in more on the landmark side. So one of the coolest parts about this, I think, is that, they incentivize a different part of the game. I think when most people look at the game, you're going to pick your tiles and things. You're going to look at the animals or the wildlife first, right? You're going to score the most points in the game with them, I believe. I think that's probably how it shakes out. I could be wrong. But I think mostly you're going for that. And the terrain is, of course, something, obviously, that you're thinking about when you're making decisions, and that makes the decisions more nuanced and more interesting. But I think that's a secondary thing. So having this expansion come and sort of incentivize that and to take the lesser strategy and kind of give it a little more breathing room, I think is really cool. I think that's a really cool balancing act. And, because if they had incentivized more of the wildlife stuff, I think you might have left everything else in the dust. You wouldn't have cared which terrain thing you got. So now it makes those that tyranny of small decisions even more robust, I think. One of the things that, and it's not too overblown, right? Like when you first look at the cards, you think to yourself, oh my God, like there's the one, for instance, the one where you can score points for every corridor you have, you know. So you just think like, oh, I'll just put like 2s everywhere and I'll just score a pile of points. Well, the fact is that you have to get 5, you know, five terrain types together in order to even place the landmark. And then now you have to work on those little ones. So there's some of them you think like, man, this is like a runaway. That's so many points. But then when you really stop and think, like, they're actually really quite balanced, and they don't upend the game. They just give you a little bit of an incentive, a little nudge in another direction, you know, to get something else. And, you know, it's a trade-off too, because when you put the landmark, you aren't putting the animal. So you're already going to probably lose at least a point, if not more. But sometimes you kind of put a token down. You're like, there's no way I'm going to score this hawk. There's another hawk over here or whatever. So, hey, that's kind of cool. You put the landmark instead. You can put the hawk on the board if you want, or you can just, you know, throw it back in the bag. I think that's kind of a cool little extra thing that you can do there. And, you know, it's not huge. It's just one more little nuance, because, you know, you might take that, you know, you might take the one with that gives you 6 points or something, or you might take something to try to, you know, a tile to get you to that one of those bigger goals, but then you're making suboptimal choices because you're like, well, I got to get the terrain type that I need, so I'm maybe not going to take the one that has the best animal for me, and maybe another player will. So it just, like, it's like the tyranny of small decisions, right? Like, every decision is kind of like, oh, this is cool because it gives me this that I want, and this I kind of want, but this one I really want, and this one I kind of want. And so, like, every choice is sort of a good, interesting choice for you. And I really think that's a very cool part of it. And you're not going to get a ton of these, right? Like, you maybe can get 2 or 3 if you're really pushing for that, but you're still going to be scoring a lot of points from your wildlife, so you're not going all whole hog on this. You know, you can't just work on the landmarks part. So it's just part of, like, your strategy, right? I mean, I think this game kind of forces you to go strong on 1 or 2 things, and then try to get, like, a nice balance of everything else, you know, so you don't miss out on too many points. And I think that that's kind of a cool thing, because it's just further expands that, you know, which is what it's supposed to do as an expansion. So yeah, I really like this one quite a bit. I'm always going to play with it when I play Cascadia. I wish it didn't have the 5 and 6 player stuff, because it's sort of a waste of money and it's kind of a waste of resources. I don't really need it, but I think for what you're getting in this game, I think it's quite awesome. I really think that they incentivize the right stuff. It maintains the elegance of the base game. It just adds some more choices and things for you when you're a seasoned Cascadia player. So, and I think new players, if you're a gamer, I don't think this is going to be too terrible to be in there. I think people can understand the concept of it or whatever. So I don't think it's too bad if you've got it mixed in and you want to be able to play it with people that do know how to play it. Well, hopefully that helps you decide whether or not this is an expansion for you. But for now, I gotta roll.